is as Community Heritage Officer. Just a few bits of housekeeping before we start. First of all, we're going to be recording this session, so if you don't want to appear on camera, turn off your camera now. Second of all, if I could ask you all to mute when you're whilst the talk is going on, so that we can get rid of some of that background noise, that would be amazing. Finally, if you would like to ask any questions, we're going to be doing questions and answers at the end. So you can either pop those into the chat, ideally, or wait until the end and ask then. Okay, so without further ado, let's pass over to John Putley. Thank you very much, John.
Thanks, Jem. Hello, everybody. Thank you for attending today. This is an oddball for us, really, because we usually have a subject to sort of talk about, and it usually links to the following weekend's Saturday opening. But today, because we're not opening on the weekend because there's some event on and whatever on our next opening, so this one is just purely it's like a treat for us. So we've basically got a combination of all our favorite documents from the archives, and you could say it's a bit of a cheat because we've got loads of favorite documents. So this is one or two of what we think are the best ones. Just to give you an idea, this is where we are. This is the Heritage Hub, viewed from the air. Most of you will be sort of fairly familiar with it. It is looking a little bit different now because it's been knocked around a bit for our purposes. We've had a new building put in, some old ones knocked down, but we'd still use this picture. We do quite like it. I like it because it shows the railway line as well. Okay, so let's get on. So I thought we'd start with what is our oldest document, and it's a land charter. It's recorded a gift of land by Roger, Earl of Hereford, to Osbert of Westbury. It's down near the forest side, down near Orr, so it includes part of a fishery at Garden Cliff on Westbury, new land on Hayden, which we think is Hayden again in Westbury, Hockley Hill and Elmos there, Framalode, which is across the river, so it's interesting, and it's got Vergates of land in Orr and Minsterworth. It's interesting because it's actually not dated precisely. On the document there's no date, but we can date it primarily because we've got the known death date of one of the witnesses of it. You can sort of see him there on the bottom line on the left hand side, Wilhelmo de Burchell, which is William of Berkeley. We know he died in 1149. We also know that the accession of Roger to the earldom of Hereford took place in 1143. Therefore this document has to come between 1143 and 1149. There are other earlier documents for Gloucestershire, but they're all squirreled away in Worcestershire Archives, primarily because Worcestershire and Gloucestershire were linked. So we don't have the really early ones. They'll never give them to us, we know, so we'd have to go and nick them if we did, but we're quite happy for them to look after it. One of the nice ones we've got is the Winchcombe Abbey cartularies. So they're written around 1328 and they contain a transcription of original documents, one of which we know dates to 811 AD. And these documents relate to the foundation of the abbey, and they include royal charters, papal bulls, charters dealing with abbey property, lists of grants, lodging, robes, grooms, candles, fuel, and other similar in return for services to the abbey, as well as other benefactions of the monastery. So you got lists of servants who are working there, their salaries, any decrees from the church, they're what they call the reckoning of parish churches that the abbey was involved with, and it's got sort of knights' fees and tithes owed. It's a really great book. I say great book, there's actually two of them, and you'd think, being abbey cartularies, they'd be fantastically illustrated. Sadly, these aren't. Although here in this next slide, you'll see this is the limit of the decoration in there. So no massive illuminated capitals, sadly, but you can see it's really well written anyway. And there's a lot of these drawings on the margin there as well. One of the other fascinating things about these is that they are actually now bound in a book, but the bindings of the book are actually made from covers from other sheets of other information, other books. And this one, on the front and back of these, there's actually medieval sheet music. I should say this is Heather Forbes's favourite document. She's the county archivist, and she's very keen on music and everything. So she's going to do some research into these. So watch this space, and they might become our sort of archives theme tune in the next few years or something. So we don't know very much about them. As far as we know, nobody's ever really tried to play them. One of my personal favourites in the documents we have in the archives is the Gloucester Castle account roll. Dates from about 1265. It's the only document that survived that was written inside the castle, and essentially it's a list of repairs made to the castle that was ordered by Prince Edward after the castle had been captured by royal forces during the Second Barons' War. It's about what, 4 meters long in total, rolled up. There's lots of sheets inside it. It's really interesting. It details, say, works that are taken by local craftsmen, some of whom are named. It gives all the cost of these repairs, plus the cost of materials purchased, including stone, timber, and ironwork. And one of my actual ancestors, the earliest one I know of, was a Roger de Putley, and he supplied a length of oak to the castle and brought it up from outside Gloucester. So that's interesting for me. It also includes details of the garrison. So it gives us at any one time the number of troops that were there. Usually it was a couple of knights, plus about 5 men at arms, 5 or 10 men at arms, plus a company of archers. And there's also the castle caretaker and their boys have there. So it's a fantastic thing. There is a contemporary copy in the Royal Exchequer records in the National Archives in London, but ours is actually the original one. And to give you an idea of what it's like, this is it. As you can probably see, it's written in medieval Latin. Luckily, we have a transcript. So a lady from Painswick, about 1977, she decided to translate it for us. So it's really accurate and really interesting. And I'd say I think it's probably my favourite document in the whole archives. It's really interesting. I thought we'd show you our earliest map. So this is our earliest map. It's of Lydney. It's in the Forest of Dean, probably land to the southwest of Lydney. The next slide will give you an idea. And it's a really interesting document. It shows open field strips that were occupied by individuals. There's no north given, and the only reference point on it is you can see in the centre there, you could make out the word Lydney Marsh. So we know where Lydney Marsh is. It's still there today, but it has moved over time. And to give you an idea, this is the area, we're pretty sure. It's a very hard process to georeference these maps. I actually think that the map we've just shown you is actually really in the middle to the left of this slightly, because there's a lot of things have changed. And on this picture, if you look at the top of this map, you can see where it says St Mary's Holt and the paper mills. Well, we know that in the Tudor times, this was where the actual Severn Estuary was. So all this ground below it is new. So, this map, the so-called map, looks like a map, is probably that area rather than lower down to where it is today. But again, a fascinating addition to the archives, and one we do quite like. Another fantastic document we have, it's got the serious name of the Roll of Landgavil Rents in Gloucester. It was compiled in 1455 by the Canon of Lantony, with Robert Cole. Now he's termed in this as the renter, and it was used to collect land gavel, which is essentially land rates throughout the city of Gloucester. It's a wonderful document. It records the amount due for each tenement, who the owners and occupiers were, a little brief history of the property that is taken from earlier rolls. So it preserves some information that was written even earlier. It's basically a great big long roll again, arranged in 2 columns, as if you're starting on the cross of Gloucester, and it's basically you're walking down each of the gate streets. They do North Gate, West Gate, South Gate, and East Gate streets. And to give you an idea of where you are in this, they've actually drawn in pictures of what you're passing at the time. So on this front one page, you can see there's a drawing in the middle. We've got better ones coming in a moment. That's one of the high crosses of Gloucester, the high cross of Gloucester. And we've actually got 4 repeats of this drawing throughout the thing, because as you work down the streets, they get to the end and they return back to the top again. And so here's some pictures here. So this is the Southgate Pillory. So this was there down Southgate Street, where all your wrongdoers were put in to have things pelted at them. You've got Blackfriars Priory, which is there. You have All Saints and High Cross down there, which again is a lovely, lovely drawing. St Bartholomew's Hospital right down at the bottom of Westgate Street. And then this one here, the Holy Trinity and the Trinity Well, which again, a fantastic drawing, and that church is long gone now. But I mean, look at the cockerel at the top. It must have been a really great church that was there. So again, this document is really important for the history of Gloucester, and it's a really nice document that we love. We can move all over the place now, and this is a favourite of Helen Bartlett, one of our archivists here. It's the map of Thornbury Manor. That's the overall map, and it's a really wonderful drawn map. We absolutely love it. If you look, we'll look at it in the top left there. You can see a little square drawn out, and that'll actually turn out to be the city of Bristol, which we've got a better image of in a minute. But it's really well drawn. There are ships on the river. There are on the hedges. You can see the divide in the fields. There are actually gates drawn. Thornbury Castle is drawn, and there's a list of reference saying sort of who owned what and occupied them. So this is the quick in look at this. There's Thornbury Castle on the left hand side. It's quite an accurate drawing of the castle. If you go down to Thornbury and look at the castle today, that's what you're going to see. It's also got a defensive wall around it, which isn't quite there so much. But on the right hand side there's the city of Bristol, with a great big weathercock there and the River Avon which goes out. So it's a really interesting thing. Bristol wasn't the subject of the map, but they knew it was important enough to actually put it on there. Yeah, one of my favourites on this map, you've got these ships that are there. And again, this is an interesting mix of vessels. So you've got on the top right, you've got a Tudor style galleon, sort of, the Mary Rose sort of thing. Then on the bottom one, you've got a full rig brig, which is quite a modern ship for the time of this map. And then on the left hand side, we've got a cog, which was really quite an elderly ship there, a primitive ship. So, this artist must have been very familiar with these and was drawing them as he'd seen them on the sort of at the time. So again, contemporary pictures, which are really interesting, again help bring this map to life. I like this one. It's a little booklet about a survey of some estates. It's called an accomp, and a comp was basically an archaic term for accounts. And inside it, the guy's just listing various things that he spent on the estate. But we like it because of these lovely pictures. Right, a fun picture of a chicken and a beehive. Not quite sure what the chicken's doing. If you look at the one there, it's like shooting a laser up to get an insect or something. So we don't know what that is. But it's a nice picture of chickens. And then the beehive on the right-hand side. As you may know, the archives, we do have some beehives. We'll see another picture of them later. But again, it's just the sort of thing that you would find on the cover of your sort of, these are things that didn't mean much at the time. But, today, they give us a real nice insight into how these things were produced and made. This is Gemma's favourite, one of Gemma's favourite images here. So this is a great big charter of Henry VIII, and it records the foundation of the bishopric of Gloucester. It's pretty big. It's about what, 1 metre by half a metre, 3/4 of a metre in size, and it, you can see it there. It's got lots of writing. We'll zoom in on the next one, on the next bit. Look at that fantastically detailed illuminated capital for H, and if you look, you see the H there to the right of it. You can just make out ENRIC, Henricus, it says. And again, this is a royal document. It's got its seal at the bottom, but it's just a wonderful picture. I think it's probably the best illuminated capital we have. We don't have too many, but this is the nicest one. Again, more drawings. This is the lovely little set of drawings we have. It's called the 1st of May. It's an illustrated manuscript drawn for the headmistress. Yes, sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. I think the PowerPoint presentation is still showing the Thornbury map.
Oh, right. Okay.
I'm not sure. It doesn't seem to have caught up.
Okay. Let's.
I'm not sure why.
Nor am I. Everything's normal from my end. Oh, this is what we like. If I go back.
Oh, there we go. It's moved on to the H of the
H. Okay, right. Okay, so okay, there's the H. Let's try moving on to the 1st of May. Yeah.
Yep, that hopefully looks
good. Yep, good, brilliant. Okay, so yeah, say this was a picture drawn for the headmistress of high school girls by one of the teachers, and she's put together a booklet that actually covered the whole of the school year. And you say the artwork is fantastic. This actually shows the sort of the houses in the school. So Bearland and Heartland are among them. I'll try and go through it now, hopefully. So now you should be seeing 4 just sample pages from this. So you've got a picture of the foundation of the school and how the weather was so wet. You've got an exhibition of the school, and you've got during the war how the girls were fire watchers and trying to look after the school. And then the bottom right, you've got some marching exercises which have become quite military by this time. And again, this book, contains about what, 30-40 pages, and again, the artwork is really good. This teacher obviously spent a lot of time on this and to give it to the headmistress as a present. So hopefully now you'll see an enclosure map. This is the Deerhurst enclosure map. Again, it's typical of many of the enclosure maps we have, but this one's got a great one. So you can see that figure down there on the bottom left of the screen. This is Jeremiah Hawkins, and he owned land on both sides of the River Severn at Deerhurst. But he always refused to pay money to cross the ferry at the Hore Passage there. So he always went across the river on horseback, summer or winter. And we know at least one servant drowned while accompanying him. So, you know, this guy was I'm not going to pay money for the ferry. I'm going to cross it on horseback. Presumably the servant was on another horse. We don't know. But yeah, and you know, this guy, just stubborn, I suppose, but he owned quite a lot of land around the area, and it's nice to see that this person has been preserved in the map. So this is the post-enclosure map of Homestall End, which is in the part of the Manor of Todingham. It's quite an early enclosure map. It's quite a nice one. You can see that on the writing it's got there. It shows you the land which lay dispersed by ridges amongst the tenants and now by consent of every man's portion laid together. So this originally shows you how the actual manor was split up between lots of different people. They had all the little in one field, everybody had a strip. This has actually combined all those and separated it out. So it's a very early enclosure map, essentially. And we like it. It's fairly dull in colour, all those bright colours there. But you can see on the left-hand side, there's lots of circles showing the colours, and besides that, the names of people who've been given the land or are occupying the land. What's interesting about this one is it was redrawn. So this one comes from about 1592, 1593, around about there. And it was redrawn a little bit later in the sort of 1600s, and it was made a lot brighter. And again, this is a real nice one. Lots of good colours in this. You've got a lovely cartouche on the title cartouche, bright colours. For a change, you've also got a compass rose down there, which you can see. And the next slide, we'll be zooming on a couple of those bits. So there's your compass rose, there's your title cartouche. All of these are featured on modern maps. But if interestingly, the buildings here, which are beautiful artwork to them, but they are shown in elevation rather than in plan view. And of course, we always see them today in plan view. So this is at a time when people weren't sure how was the best way to show a map. Do you not want to see the place you're looking at? Which is if you're walking by, that's what you're going to see. Or do you want to see it as if a bird's eye view? Of course, today we take it as a bird's eye view, but back then people weren't quite so sure. So this is another really nice book we have. Keith Lloyd Slurp there. So it's a survey of estates belonging to a gentleman called Benjamin Hyatt, Esquire. He owned a fair bit of land around Gloucester. And again, to record this land, he put it together in a book, and the book contains maps and apportionments showing who was occupying what the field names were. The book is about half a metre long and about a quarter of a metre wide, so about 1 to 3 foot. It's big, it's great, but that gives us great detail. And you can see on this one, this is just a sample page of Longney, and we've got some zooming in on the next slide. So hopefully you can see it. So again, beautiful titles there. Longney, it's got a fish or an eel eating itself with sheaves of wheat. With all the maps on every page, there is a north, a compass rose, and there's also a scale of sizes. So they're realizing this time you need to see what you're looking at. But typical picture there on the right hand side is you can see some of the fields that are occupied by various people. And again, if you go down there today, a lot of these fields, the boundaries haven't changed, they're still there. This is where the Gloucestershire Orchard Trust have one of their orchards, and they're occupying 2 orchards by that sort of by the pill that comes in and goes through South Field, and the field boundaries haven't really changed at all. So it's interesting with some of these maps, they still do preserve what's in the landscape today. Some of the maps we don't have the originals. This is one of them, but we like it because of this picture of this surveyor. It's a self-portrait. The map's a photocopy. It's Long Newton, which is out towards Shipton Moor, owned by the Escort family, or it was. And again, I don't know. I don't know where this sort of PC came from. Presumably, somebody sort of photographed it. Then it was actually old photocopied, and it's one of those old photocopies where if you rub your thumb over it, all the print comes off. So we handle it quite gently. It's encapsulated now, even though it's not the original. But again, the chap who drew this was Stephen Jeffries of Minchinhampton, and he did this little self-portrait of himself. And it's wonderful. He's got a beautiful theodolite there, and it gives you his age, which is 28, I believe, isn't it? 48, isn't it? 68. Sorry, get me eyes in, I can see that. And it's a wonderful, and so you forget this is how land was surveyed. We have another wonderful book in the archives, which is a field survey book, and it's like a maths book. It's all trigonometry with distances, angles, that sort of thing. And you tend to forget this was how people were making maps until relatively recently.
John,
Yeah.
I just wonder for everybody else, are the slides moving? Oh, there we go. Brilliant.
Is it still lagging? Is it? This is really strange, isn't it?
We're just now on the map of the Manor of Long Newton with the little self-portrait.
That's good. Okay, so yeah, so basically, I was saying this. It's almost lagging. So that's what I was saying. This is a photocopy map we have. I don't know where the original is held, but I say it's one we do keep primarily because we love this picture of the surveyor, this self-portrait of this chap. There we go. I'll try the next slide. Hopefully, everybody can see. That's the Gloucester's Civil War defences. Jem, do you want to put a thumb up when it moves on? Because then I can see you in my screen. Brilliant. Okay, that'll be good if we can do that. Brilliant. So again, this map was found relatively recently, within the last 10 years. It's bound into a volume called the Bibliotheca Gloustrensis, which is a collection of Civil War pamphlets that was put together in the 1700s, basically. And it includes a lot of pamphlets and an account of the city during the siege. And it's a really wonderful source for anybody interested in the siege of Gloucester and what happened around in the Civil War period. Now, at the time, there was one map going around, the Hall and Pinnell map, which had some defences drawn on it. And everybody sort of thought, well, this maybe is what the defences were. But this map was found bound into one of these pamphlets in this book, and we know it's a contemporary one. So again, it's an idea of how Gloucester looked during the siege. So you've got going around the outside, you've got the names of the various places, like at the top there you've got the small sconce. You can see the internal division, the college wall, which was built up in case the royalists got into the city and they needed to withdraw from the sort of the outskirts. The land at the top left, where it says the ground is very low, well, that was flooded by the defenders, so the attackers couldn't get over. And it's one of these wonderful things that certain person, John Rhodes, has gone through city deeds and everything, and again, it's basically proved the layout of this map. It was there all along, but we just couldn't see it because we didn't know what these words in these deeds meant. So again, this is a really critical thing for the history of Gloucester and Gloucestershire. It's a wonderful map, and it's really, really good. I really love it. Okay, moving on. Excellent. So this is the unusual one. This is the map of the Gloucester Innshire, 1624. It's the only map we have of the Innshire. So what is the Innshire here, you're asking? Well, the Innshire was land around the outside of Gloucester that was controlled by the city. It was basically given to the city through various earlier kings, as sort of, just extra income for them, basically. We lost control of it after the restoration in 1660, when Charles II took away the Innshire and distributed it out to the various parishes. It's a wonderful map. North is to the right. Okay, so there's no compass roads, but we know it's to the right. So it's a little bit hard to understand at times. If you turn it around the other way, the writing is all wrong, so I tend to keep it this way. But you can see that in the centre there, you've got the actual city drawn as a circle. It wasn't quite a circle. You can see the Severn, you can see it on the island, and there's a scale given there on the bottom left hand side, and you can see various churches and places. I'll do on to the next slide because it's a little bit closer detail. There we go, hopefully. waiting for Gemma's thumbs up.
It hasn't moved on for me yet, but I'm not sure whether it's just, oh yes, here, there we go.
Brilliant, fantastic. So that's a zoom up on it. We don't have a fantastic copy of this, sadly. This is about the best resolution we've got. But if you have a look at it, you can see the cross in the middle of the city there. Going up to the top, there's Alney and there's the vineyard. You can see Maysmore, you know, and then moving to the right, you've got Kingsholm, Twigworth and Longford, which we know are all still there today. Moving to the left, you've got Pogsmead, which now we call it Podsmead, obviously, and Hempstead's there. You can see the Hempstead House on the hill there. Lots of windmills in that bottom corner there, which are really interesting because you use windmills where there's no flow of water. You need to flow water, so you propel them by wind. You know, it's a fantastic little map, a lot of good information in there, but I say it's sadly something that Gloucester lost control of through sort of, you know, royal spite, as you were. You know, we defeated the king, so they took all this away from us and scattered it around to the four winds, the other parishes. Okay, moving on. Hopefully we should see sales particulars. Like having a quick slur. Yeah, brilliant. We have, I would estimate, oh gosh, 10, 20,000 sales particulars in the archive at various times. So basically they come to us through estate agents, auctioneers, etc., private collections. This is just one typical example. It's Wickhill Hill Estate down in the Witwissington. They typically have all the sort of the bits and pieces about the property, usually have a map attached, and then they have the lots that's been sold in, so you could buy the whole thing or various lots. And we have, you know, these some various things. I mean, if you look on our online catalogue, just put sales particulars, you'll be there for about a week and a half going through them. But some of them are really good. Some aren't quite so much. You know, sometimes you don't get the maps. Some of the later ones, you get photographs of the house and the interior and what was in each room. So they can be really interesting, especially if you're doing any sort of like house history anywhere, because sometimes these things will really help you. Moving on. Brilliant. So this is a pamphlet. We don't know much about it really, but it's entitled "The Gloucester Bastille: The Pathetic Particulars of a Poor Boy Sentenced to Suffer 7 Years Solitary Confinement in Gloucester Jail." And the best thing about this is that picture on the left-hand side. Obviously, there's the poor boy on his knees. You can see he's got a ball and chain around his ankle, and there's the jailer, you know, looking quite cross, walking away with the keys. It's a magnificent image, and sort of one that we only sort of found fairly recently because it's folded up into a book. The Clifford collection came to us from Gloucester Library many years ago, and you know, there's so much in these collections. There's the Hyatt one as well as another sort of collection that, you know, it's only rarely that things in them actually come to light like this. So, you know, this is a really nice one. It's one of my favorites. I just love that drawing. Okay, so this one, well, we have marriage registers and parish registers for the Church of England, Diocese, the Church of England throughout Gloucestershire, and you throw up some really nice things. You know, most of them just, you know, so and so is baptised, so and so got married. But this is a really interesting one from Horsley Parish Register. John Pegler and Thomas were half married on August the 11th. I proceeded no further because they only paid me half of the cost. So obviously these people were getting married; they couldn't afford the full thing, so the vicar only half married them. Quite what that meant, we don't know. You know, whether did it mean they were not fully married until the vicar, they got the rest of the money, then the vicar finished them off? We don't know. But again, it's some of the nice sort of information you can get from the parish registers, which are often quite dry, but occasionally they do bring out magical things, and this is one of them. And so is this one. You know, we all know and heard about the plague and everything, and this is from North Nibley Burial Register, which is a wonderful entry. And the vicar obviously was, really concerned about what was going on. So he explained what was happening. Mind that this year, 1638, it pleased God to visit this parish with the plague, of which Henry Matthews, John his son, Mary his daughter, and Abigail, daughter of Nicholas Mundy, whose names are above written, were all suspected to die, and those whose parties whose names are written were all certainly known to die of the same. This comes at the bottom of the page, and on the top and the right of the next page, there's about another 15 people all told. They were all buried in the garden. And you just sort of say, well, this was, with recent COVID experiences, we know quite how terrible this might have been. The plague itself, we tend to remember the two big ones, so the Black Death of 1349-50 and the 1666 1666 plague. But plague was endemic. It was always breaking out somewhere. So the parish registers are full of occasionally people dying of plague. This happens to be a particularly bad outbreak in North Nibley. This next slide will be it's churchwardens accounts, and again we've got accounts, churchwarden accounts for nearly every parish in the county, and again they make really interesting reading because they they lay out the income and the expenditure that the churchwardens collected, and the data, literally the day-to-day running of the parish. You have things like visitation expenses, bell repairs, money for bell ringers, brushes, glazing, all sorts of things. One of the most interesting aspects of them is they include payments for what we call now is called vermin. And in this example from Coley, you can see on the sort of a third line down there, you will see it says paid for 2 fishers. I can't quite make out the amount there, but this is kingfishers. So vermin was basically, thanks to the Tudor vermin laws, which was any animal that they thought posed a threat to crops, and it included lots of things. Foxes and sparrows very popular, but hedgehogs were also happily killed away. And again, it just gives us an idea of what was happening there, and what they were doing. An interesting entry in this one, though, is halfway down the page, is it got 7 shillings and 6pence for irons for the churchyard goats. Presumably the churchyard had goats to keep the grass down, but the goats kept getting out, which is something goats excel at. They are very good at that. So they obviously decided to make some more iron, probably change to keep the goats sort of contained, as it were. We have in our archives the Lloyd Baker collection, which is fantastic. He was an anti-slavery campaigner, but as part of that, you have the whole family collection, and in that we have Mary Baker, whose surname is Sharp, so Granville Sharp is the anti-abolitionist. And she was a skilled watercolor painter. So these are just some of the flowers and apples that she actually painted. She did a lot of botanical research, and the apples I absolutely love. The Golden Bennett and the Ashmead Kernel is shown there. And again, some of the apples she's painted are now no longer extant, so we know what they look like just purely because of her pictures. My favourite is the Little Herbert, which is a nice one. But she painted a lot of these flowers as well, so she's really skilled, and relatively unknown. So not much happened to her. So these pictures, they just stayed in the collection. We also have other things, photograph albums, and this one, hopefully you can see, is the Reverend Edward Blackwell's photo collections. He created 3 volumes of sort of photographic collections from Amberley. It covered the church, local scenes, people, visitors in the churchyard. Sometimes they're really detailed and they have lots of names of people, dates. Other times they are just pictures, as hopefully you can see here, with a couple of sort of rather stern looking Victorian ladies, then a photo of 3 more ladies with their dogs. Can we see that, Jem? Okay, yeah?
Yeah, it's just come up. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, yeah. So I'll let you have a few seconds on that one before we go away. But again, these albums are brilliant. And Edward Blackwell was, I'm not quite to say he's not a genius, but he really had foresight, because can you imagine if everybody had taken photographs of the people in their parish at the time? They'd have been fantastic. Again, they've got soldiers, there's sailors in there, people going by. I'll move on to the next slide, which hopefully you'll see, which is a fantastic Victorian old gentleman there. You know, straight out of Oliver Twist, isn't he? You know, I'd love to be able to dress like that. It's fantastic. And again, we think this lady on the left-hand side is his wife. We're not 100% sure of that because, again, we can't quite tell. These are pictures where they haven't actually named the people, but we think they are. You know, again, wonderful pictures. These whole albums are a real resource, and again, something, you know, we're so happy that we have, and we cherish them. Okay, brilliant. So among the stuff we have in the archives, we have letters and diaries from people, and we've got this lovely little set of letters from Samuel Allen and written to Angelina or Annie Clark Barclay, and basically they're letters written by Samuel to Annie, who became his future wife. Well, he was working as a cowman in Slimbridge and she was a dairymaid in Barclays. They weren't too far apart, but he wrote to her quite a lot. The letters admittedly are fairly brief and they're mainly concerned with making arrangements for meat, as you would, but every now and then he throws in some references to local events and comments on various weddings and travelling fairs and entertainments. It's a wonderful little set. There's about 10 letters in all. But what's especially nice is towards the end of the sort of the collection, we also get photographs. And this one, which I hope you'll see now, is one of the best. It's a fantastic photograph. It's the Clark family. It's a few years later. We think it's on the baptism of their grandchildren. So Samuel Clark is at the back in the bowler hat, obviously. Annie is sat in the centre holding the sort of the baby in the middle. And then these are obviously their sons and daughters around them. So obviously there's presumably the lady on the right hand side with the other baby is the wife of one of the boys, presumably the guy next to him. And it's, you know, it just sums up what a lovely occasion this must have been in these people. And it might be hard for you to make out, but I love the black Labrador bottom left of your screen. If you see the full size, this dog is staring so intently at something, and you wonder what the photographer is waving at him. Is he waving a sausage or something at the dog just to get the dog staring? But again, you know, we don't get too many of these photos cropping up, you know, posed or unposed. And again, it's a really nice addition to the archives, and you know, really brings the past to life, I think. Brilliant. Again, this is another one of those things. It's posed, but it's really nice. This is Nurse Wolfe, a photograph taken of Gotherington on a donkey cart about to start her reigns, 1895. She was a district nurse there, and we know from the back of the photograph that salary is about £35 an annum, which is, you know, good, but not good at all in some ways. And again, interesting to see we've got nurses fighting for decent wages now as well. But I love this photo. You can imagine her wandering around the village in her cart, visiting various people. And again, it's the only photograph we have of her. So this picture, again, we've got boards of guardians and overseers records, people who are looking after the poor. And this is a real nice one. This is the ground floor plan of the Stowe boards of guardians or the Stowe Union workhouse. You know, these were all basically done to a set plan. Usually there were variations, but they were typically arranged sort of like a cross or a Y shape. And you know, this one brings up, you know, women's yards, men's yard, girls and boys. And one of the sort of the tragedies of these workhouses were families, if they went in, they were separated. And this was, you know, they might only meet on a Sunday at the church service, or they might, if they're lucky, meet at lunch. This is the ground floor plan. There's another floor above it where you've got sort of sleeping quarters there and everything. But again, a nice social commentary to the past. This one, again, it's quite early one. I hope you can see it. Not yet. I can tell you it's exciting because it's the first mention of Christmas we have in the archives. And it's still a down thumb. Come on, machine, catch up with me today. It's not doing brilliantly, is it? Don't know why it should be. So I try going back and prodding it. So if I had an alt text, I could describe it for you. So you're basically going to be looking, hopefully at some point, you're going to be looking at a little deed that's written. In real life, it's about 3 inches by 2 inches, written on parchment with some fantastic medieval or late medieval handwriting on it. And we're still not appearing. I wonder what's happening with this today. Oh, brilliant! I've got the signal. This is like live sport broadcasting, isn't it? You know, everything. That's it. So you can see that it's a fantastic document, beautiful handwriting. Again, it's not dated, but we think it's written around 1270. It records a grant of land in Standish, made between John de Colthrop, who you can see sort of fourth or fifth words in there, Johannes de Colthrop there, and William de Colthrop, a cousin of Gloucester, and it's about swapping some land, dated for Christmas. It's interesting that it's got a great name on the third line down. Sixth word in, Turtlesbrook. Just don't ask what's flowing through that water course, because it is, as its name suggests, not very pleasant to go swimming in. And again, it's funny, isn't it? You know, almost 800 years later, we're in exactly the same situation as they were then. So lots of stuff flowing in the water. Okay, hopefully this will be the Will of Joan painter. We have lots of wheels in the archive. They were sort of written. I know it's not coming up yet, but we've got them from about, top of my head, from about 1500 through to about up to 1940 with some of the wheels, to be honest. Again, made to give out land. What's going to happen to my materials after I've died? Now, this one, which hopefully again will come up in a minute, the Lady Joan Painter, she owned part of what is now 109 to 111 Westgate Street in Gloucester. I'd love to know why this is not flicking through today like it usually does. That's a rather scrabbly wheel, I have to admit. I think not sure what we can do to speed this up, I'm afraid.
I'm not sure, John, whether it's working for some people and not for others.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. It's come through.
Come through. Brilliant. Okay. Again, finely scribbly wheel, but it's important. It gives a lot of property in Westgate Street. As you can see there, I've given devise all my great messuage or tenements and the pertinences with houses, edifices, buildings, gardens, courts, backsides, heredaments, etc., etc. So this woman was quite wealthy, and this was represented, quite a percentage of the wealth in the city. And again, we have lots of these. This is just a complete random sample almost. Move on. Brilliant. This one's gone through quicker. Inventories. We have a lot of inventories. They are wonderful things. They record the goods and chattels of a deceased person, and they can be itemized by room, so they can really bring to life somebody's life, basically, with what they own, the clothes they had, things like this. And they sometimes they have not so much detail, but some go into really good detail. So you can see on this one actually has in the top line, in the hall, good table boards and carpet. So this person actually had a bit of a carpet, probably a rug, we'd guess. And it gives the prices, and you can use this to help with family history and also house and building history if you're lucky enough to find one that suits. Brilliant, that's good. We also have the quarter sessions records, and among the quarter sessions records, we have jail registers. A lot of these, and again, these are wonderful. They give a sort of a date and a name of a person. They give where they're from. They describe them. So we got how tall they were, what colour hair, did they have marks. Gives what offences that they did and who they were brought before, their sentence, what happened to them, and whether they stayed or were let go at the end of the term or transported, executed, etc. We've got about 30 or 40 of these, and they're really interesting reading. You can all see them now on Ancestry. So that's, if you subscribe to Ancestry, if you come into the archives, you can access these, and they are great for browsing, rather like the newspapers, which we'll see in a moment. Lots of business records. Perhaps one of the greatest collections we have is the Gloucester Railway Carriage and Wagon Company. The company opened in 1860. From 1862, they thought, oh, there's this newfangled thing called photography. Isn't it good? So they started taking a photograph of things they made. In total, we've got 116 photograph albums, each with about 40 photographs in. And each photograph has got an order number and a date, and you can actually then trace it back in the company records. This is a typical thing in an early passenger coach. What they were most famous for, hopefully they'll be coming up in a second, brilliant, is the private owner wagons. So this is how they made their bread and butter, basically coal wagons. 5 and 7 plank wagons made for private owners Basically, if you had a business making anything, you usually had to use coal to do it. And so coal wagons were quite important. And even small companies had their own wagon. An interesting one here, as you can see, is the beehive manufacturer in Gloucester. You know, not a very big concern, but he had a coal wagon that was used. Wasn't all they made, however. So they also made horse-drawn transport, and this is a beautiful little private carriage, but they made ambulances, artillery limbers for the government as well. So again, beautiful things. And they actually made vacuum cleaners. So this is based on Herbert Cecil's Booth's principle. For a starter for 10, your first house ever to be vacuumed was St Catherine's Vicarage in London Road in Gloucester. It would be dragged up, you'd book it, it was dragged up to the front door, being pulled by 2 men. The motor would be started, and there's this great big hose that would be passed into the house, and you'd vacuum stuff up. You hope they keep a good hold of the cat, but the hamster was never seen again, sadly. Not all they built, though. They did build street furniture, and we love this picture. It's a seat, plain simple seat made for the Western Australian Government Railways, WAGA, between 1890 and 2003. That the company ran that. Gloucester supplied, I think they only supplied a couple of things for them, but what I like about it is the people here. You know, we used to think these guys were maybe sat in the Sunday best for the photograph, but if you look at the shoes are all battered, so they probably weren't. So you can imagine these guys happily working away and just got dragged out to have a photograph taken, and I'm not sure if they're too happy about it. So the next photograph we've got, the next slide, is we've got about 12 boxes of these, and it's going to be coming up any minute. And it's basically, give its technical term, it's the Board of Trade half-yearly shipping returns. Don't sound very interesting, but they actually are really fascinating records. So the principle behind them is that twice a year, every ship owner and every ship master had to give the Board of Trade a summary of the voyages that their ship had done. And this was mainly for local trade or coastal trade, but we do have trade to Ireland as well. And hopefully this is going to turn up. There's no colourful pictures in these, but where they are good is they give an account of the voyages that are undertaken. And then they also give an account of the crew. So for each of these ships in there, and there's about, off the top of my head, about 250 ships listed, I think. We have generally, for every year they're trading, 2 sheets of paper giving the details. And this is really annoying. It's not coming through all the time. Just don't know why. Because time is flying by now as well. These are all indexed. If you know you have a mariner in the family and you want to check, you know the ship or you know a name, you can search our catalogue for it and they will pop up. Brilliant. I've just been told it's popped up. So there you go. The pages themselves are about an A3 sheet, again, written on both sides. And again, these are really important for finding out, was my ancestor a mariner? If so, what boat was he on? What ship was he sailing? And you can find it through these. So they are fantastic. Okay, so I've moved on to the next slide. From water, we'll go straight to airplanes. And when this one pops up, Gloucester Aircraft Company, it's not yet. We all know about them. There was actually 2 companies. There's Gloucestershire Aircraft Company, and it was changed to Gloucester Aircraft Company about 1926, I think. And the company made aircraft, very good. But they also built aircraft for the Schneider Trophy, the seaplane racing, high-speed ones. And the Gloucester Company built, for example, 4 aircraft that took part in this. And when this slide pops up, you will see 2 of them. You'll see on the left-hand side, you'll see the Gloucester 3 seaplane. That got to 2nd place in 1923. And on the other side, you see the Gloucester 4 airplane. That's 1927. Again, one's a photograph, one's going to be a drawing. Oh, come on, machine. The reason the company were involved in this trophy was simply because it was a good marketing ploy, and they often got paid for them. They always got paid for what they did, and the government did sponsor them. They wanted to promote British aviation, and Gloucester were quite a company in the forefront of this. Oh, this is really annoying, isn't it? So sorry about this, people. Brilliant. I hear it's just been popped in. So there you go. The Gloucester 3 on the left hand side, and the Gloucester 4 on the right hand side. The Gloucester 4 itself was exceptionally fast, and it might have actually gone on to win its race in 1927, except that it was forced to retire. The pilot realised it wasn't flying quite as well as it should have done, and they landed the check, and they realised it had a cracked propeller. So if it had kept going another couple of laps, it'd have probably just exploded and killed the pilot. The winner of the 1927 contest was the Supermarine S5, which of course was the forerunner of the Spitfire. So it's interesting to think that, you know, Gloucester might have got the design first. Let's try this one. Brilliant, fantastic. 1932, the biggest airplane in the world came to fly into Gloucester. It's a Handley Page HP 42/45, used by Imperial Airways. They are a mix of elegant and ugly. I think they're really, really beautiful. And this one flew into Gloucester. It was taken actually theatre critics to the Malvern Festival. So they flew from London to Gloucester, which is the nearest runway. Basically, I'll say runway. We're looking at it's landing in a field at Brockworth on the old GAC site. And then all the sort of the theatre critics went off to Malvern Festival. In the meantime, you know, the aircraft company said, well, we'll give some joyrides. So they gave civil joyrides first to the government, to the local officials, so from the councils, primarily saying, well, this is what we can do. What a good idea this is actually to have an airfield here, which of course the borough councils, Cheltenham and Gloucester, did in the end. But they also offered flights for the public. Cost about 10 shillings and sixpence. You booked it from Thomas Cook in Gloucester. It cost about 25 quid, and you know it's been recorded on this paper here. Now I think it's a possibility that the boy on the bottom left of that screen is my dad. He was in the area at the time, and he mentioned seeing an aircraft once, and he would have been, you know, would have been around then. So, quickly move on to newspapers. We've got all the main newspapers in the archives. They are fantastic to look at. We call them rabbit holes because if you go looking for one thing, you're going to be looking at other stuff. And this is what you'll see, hopefully, is a cover of the Gloucester Journal from 1796. So the Gloucester Journal started in 1730. Ran on to about 1980, I think, basically, was taken over by the Citizen, but the Journal had lots of information on it. Beauty of these things, the front page is nearly always adverts, and then all the national stories followed by local stories inside. They are wonderful things. If you can look at them on Ancestry, only a few, but also on the British Newspaper Library have imaged them, although sadly that's a commercial site. You have to pay for it. I've heard it's there now. And again, you know, very small classic newspapers. They're about 3 foot long with type that's like 10 points, so it's hard to see, but there's so much information in these. They are really wonderful to look at. Quick flick into some things about music at the moment. This is one we've got. Brilliant. It's a song, a cover of a song sheet written by Sir Herbert Brewer, organist for Cathedral, and it's written on there. Composer indebted to his friend Dr. Edward Elgar for scoring the work. So again, you know, this is sort of thing you don't always gonna find, and again, it's really nice to look at. I personally prefer this one. You know, a little more lowbrow than the first one, but 1944. And although churches were dominated by organs, some still relied on fiddlers and other musicians. And again, a fantastic picture, really evocative of Johnny there playing away. It comes from a magazine called the Gloucestershire Countryside, which was similar to the Cotswold Life, but sadly is now defunct. I would imagine Johnny didn't just play the churches. He probably happily did other locations, notably the village pub, which would have been great to sit and listen to. We have in our collections one world famous piece of music document. This is the Barbadian slave song. It's written down by the anti-slavery campaigner Granville Sharp, and it's now part of the UNESCO Memory of the World Register. So it's a really important document. We've got Sharp's papers from the marriage of his niece to a local man, Lloyd Baker of Hardwick. And again, this has been sort of copied and performed before UNESCO, and that's how it's got the heritage. But it's basically a slave song about how the master, he won't kill me, for he ships me regularly, basically costs money. It's a tragic song, but a wonderful one. And I think it's, if I'm right in saying, it's one of the only pieces of sort of African slave music that survived to this day. Brilliant. We have a chap, record of diaries, notebooks of William Thomas Swift. He was a school teacher at Churchdown. He wrote a diary entry every day from December 1859 till 5th of February 1915, just 5 days before he died. They are fairly personal. They give a good indication of his character. They cover lots of events, and they are, in some cases, so fantastically detailed. They are wonderful. And I'll give you this slide here, which hopefully you'll see it in a second. And it's basically, we all know about the Christmas traditions, getting the family round and going to see them. Well, he wrote down this in detail. He recorded one Christmas day a church service that lasted 2.5 hours. The family lived in Churchdown. They would think nothing of walking from Churchdown to Cheltenham and then out to Hardwick and then back to Gloucester in a day. You know, and they tell the food they had and the sort of almost the songs they sang. So they are fantastic. Brilliant. We mentioned earlier on, we have what we call personal account books here and day books. And this is a lovely one from John Clifford of Frampton 07. It lists sort of money and things, servants giving gifts at Christmas, that sort of thing. It's important because it shows in 1677-78 a payment made to mummers. And you can see it on the sort of the pull-out here, to ye mummers. They got 1 shilling. Mummers is really important. It's having a revival now, and this is one of the most important documents because it's a really early account for them. We also have lots and lots of household accounts that we term household accounts, and this is just a couple of slides. Hopefully they'll pop up in a moment. These two are from the Blathwaite family of Durham House, and they're just basic shopping lists, things that were bought. You'll see on them when it does pop up, you got a bill on the left-hand side. The most interesting thing here is a £3 of eels. Also get a crab, and then it's butter and lemons and everything, mustards there. Hopefully, when you see the slide on the other side, you'll get flour, butter, shoulder of mutton and apples. And we've got in this collection, there must be several thousand just receipts for items purchased from various proprietors. At this rate, we are going to run out of meeting time. I don't know if we get cut off, but hopefully it'll pop up in a moment. Dee, 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 dee. Still not there. So one of the things I like about these is they do actually give you an idea of some of the interesting things that were being purchased. Brilliant. It just popped up now, and I think on this one, the most interesting, well, the one I like the most is on the right hand one, halfway down, just over, you've got cheese, but below that you've got mackerel. So this gives you an idea of some of the things we're covering in. Okay, the Blathwaite family, Durham, very well off, but this is the sort of thing they were dealing a lot with local suppliers. I'll just flick on. We've got some more on this one. These are bills, brilliant, tailoring and dressmaking. So you've got a gents bill on the left-hand side, 7 waistcoats, a cost, meant to be a coat, a bit of a typo, 2 pairs of breeches and repairs, comes to about £216 a day. The ladies' bill on the other side, ultra and a satin gown, some dresses, buttons and bone, about 152. So, the gents are having more money spent on them, which is very nice. But again, we've got lots of these things. So if anybody's interested in this sort of thing, how much people were paying for clothing, etc., these are really good things to look at. And again, they really bring the past to life. We do have lots of records of schools, and on this one in a second you'll see it's a beautiful drawing of Yate National School, which will hopefully pop up any second now. Brilliant, it has. And you can say, well, they don't draw them or paint them like this anymore. It's a wonderful picture. If you go down to Yate today, by the Heritage Centre there, this building's on the side of it, And it looks exactly the same, even down to the chimney breast with Yate National School written across it. So again, we are lucky enough to have some of these architectural drawings scattered around the archives, and this is one for really nice. Next slide is it's a recipe. Basically, comes from the Commonplace Book of Nathaniel Clutterbuck. And I'll tell you about it while you're looking for it. It's called A Remedy for a Flux. And a flux was basically sickness and diarrhea, very common happening back then. And this is a rather interesting recipe, which makes you think about what they might have found. It's written very, very poorly, has to be said. It's very hard to understand. But it basically tells the person, I'm just trying to wait to see if it does pop up in the next second before I dive into it more. I'm gonna have to go for it. It basically says you basically take some milk and you take a very filthy cheese. And from the cheese, you scrape off the filth, which is mold, and then you put the filth into the milk and boil it. Okay, you then thicken the milk, and it's still not appearing, I've been told. And then you then strain it off and you actually drink it. You're thinking, what are they boiling cheese and milk for? Sounds crazy, but then you suddenly realize if they're using a moldy cheese was where we get penicillin from. So this recipe, you do wonder, have they actually stumbled across a recipe for antibiotics to be used, which would be effective? I still can't see it, sadly.
John,
yeah.
John, just to interrupt, sorry, just to say that there's a chance we might get cut off any moment.
Yes, that's
oh,
what I'm
and it's
about.
now showing. Just to let you know that we might suddenly disappear. Sorry, everybody, for the technical issues.
Yeah, that hasn't happened before. Really sorry, but you can see this thing. It's very good. With lots of recipes in this book, and it's a really interesting one. Let me skip through again. Okay, the next photograph, brilliant, is some Canary Girls. The female munitions workers worked at Quedgeley in World War One for the National Shell Filling Factory. Again, it's a time when girls, they found their feet. They began to actually start working and were getting paid for it. There's train journeys to and from, so they got day trips as well. So it's a fascinating time. I'll skip on to try and get through. We haven't got too many slides left. Mentioned beekeeping earlier on. This is the Gloucester School of Beekeepers cookery. Gloucester School of Cookery Beekeepers. I'll get it right in a minute. As I say, we've got bees at the archives, and when this photograph pops up, you'll see it's quite interesting. You've got beekeepers, set of 4 or 5 there. Okay, they've got veils on, fantastic. They're handling combs from the beehive, but none of them have got gloves on, which is a really standard issue for today. And they've all got these sort of dresses with open sleeves and sort of open bottoms, presumably. And having worked with bees, that's the last thing you want. The bees are going to be flying around everywhere, and you really don't want them going into your nether regions or up under your armpit. But it's a fascinating photograph. We really like it. Hopefully it'll just turn up in a moment. Gosh, this is dreadful. Really sorry about this, folks. It's the first time. Did it pop up then, Jen? Yeah. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so there's, I mean, it's a nice picture. There's a smoker down in the bottom right. That hasn't changed at all, but great picture. Let's quickly try and move on. We've got about 4 or 5 slides left, so not too many. Brilliant. Aeronoids were a company making Cassane plastic, basically, and this could be coloured, and we've got a sheet of their blank, so this sort of tells you the colour of the sort of plastics they could make. They were still major producers of plastics until they ceased trading in the 1980s. Again, this is one of the rare things we have from them, made from basically milk and milk curds. Fascinating. Again, another little diary, brilliant. This is from Sarah Thomas in the collection. Daughter of a nonconformist minister, again, wrote lots of diaries, really detailed, and they sort of give a fairly honest view into the everyday life of the Victorian sort of daughter. So again, they're very, very interesting things, and we're glad we've got them. Brilliant, excellent, it's picking up speed. During World War One, because food was getting scarce, the government actually asked local education authorities and the Department of Food to talk with schools and let pupils go out collecting blackberries, which would then be brought in. They would be paid for this. and raised a lot of money. And we've got several schools where they let the children go out for half days collecting blackberry. There's probably a great little story, probably not true, but it's come down to us that two enterprising boys in Cheltenham went picking blackberries, and they only gave the school half the amount. And then they actually sold the rest on the high street, and they were caught. I've not found proof of that. It's just come down through word of mouth, but it'd be a brilliant one. And then at schools, again, the school logbooks, fascinating things, hold lots of information. This one is great. This is Boxwell and Leighton School. The headmistress recorded that the children all went to see an airplane which had landed in the field, and they didn't bother marking the registers because so many children. And you think about it, you know, we see airplanes every day. I mean, to be honest, I still look up when I hear one. But at this time, it was such a rare event. It was just very, very rare. But as it happened at Boxwell and Leighton, within a year or two, the Australians opened up a flying corps base there, and so they became really commonplace. And it's interesting, the headmistress does mention this throughout the rest of these logbooks. But compare it with Rencombe, where the Royal Flying Corps had an airfield set up above the school. Literally, the airplanes would be flying over the roof. And the headmaster there never mentioned an airplane once, or even the airplane. So it changed. Couple of slides left. Hopefully, you can get through them. This one, when it pops up, it's a map of Shipton, Olive and Solids. There's a bit of detail from it. There we go. 1764. This map is wonderful. It's got really good drawings of road traffic for the time, people walking, carriages. And I think this is a picture of a highwayman. We know they're operating in the area there. Looks like he might have a pistol in his hand. The horse is certainly galloping. And what you can't see is to the sort of right-hand side of this picture, there is a really posh carriage. So was it a highwayman chasing a carriage? Hopefully it was. Brilliant. We get the odd, unusual thing. This is a lady's shoe stuffed in a bunch of letters from 1860. We don't know how it got there, where it came from. It's just been something's been handed down. It's never listed, but it's probably one of the only artifacts we have in the archives. Almost at the end. Okay, this map maker was obviously into black humour. This is a gibbet that's been set up. Gibbets were used to sort of display the bodies of executed criminals. They were usually set up close to where the crime took place. Now, this one was given to me, the photo was given to me by somebody, said, oh, I've been looking at this map, it's fantastic, it's got a gibbet on. Sadly, the person didn't tell me the reference number, and for 15 years I've been looking for this picture of where this gibbet is on our maps in the archives. I've not found it yet. And our final slide, we've reached the end. Thank God for that. I can hear you all saying, basically a little bit of a prod about the next events. Well, there's no Saturday event at the archives on Saturday the 6th of May, as there would be, because there's another event going on somewhere or other. So our next Saturday event is actually entitled, Do You Want a Career or Role in Heritage? It's on Saturday the 3rd of June. It's all about careers and volunteering roles in heritage. So we've got representatives from archives, libraries, archaeology departments, museums, and lots of other heritage organisations. We've also got a couple of talks, the keynote speaker being Nick Barrett, who's the author and historian best known for the work on the BBC Who Do You Think You Are? You'll also be able to have a go at various things. There's a bit of an archaeology demo you can dig out, things like this. We'll also have behind the scenes tours of the archives as well. So if you're not done on that, it's worth coming. We will say to you, if you want to come and attend the talks, they're probably going to be heavily booked. So we do ask you to book those, which you can do via the Heritage Hub website there. And finally, our next Secrets Revealed online talk, hopefully it will be a lot smoother than this one, will be Blood, Sweat and Tears. It's all about Gloucestershire jobs in the past. So we're going to look at some of the jobs and occupations that feature in the records of the archives. So I really can't apologise enough for the technical issues today, but I hope you've enjoyed it. I know we're overrunning dramatically, so I'll hand back to Gemma to see if there's any questions. Thanks, Gem.
Hi, thank you ever such a lot, John. That was fantastic. And thank you to all of you and to John for persevering with the technical issues. Have we got any questions from people? I did see one person raise their hand. I think it was Claire. Was there a question or that you wanted to ask?
No, I'm afraid it was a mistake. I was trying to raise up this along the bottom. There's a list of stuff, and I was trying to raise it up because it's obliterating some text, but it doesn't matter.
Ah.
No, I didn't.
Okay, yeah, that that might have been something to do with the technical issues. I guess it's spilled over. It's probably one of the most image heavy PowerPoint presentations we've done. So whether that had something to do with it, I don't know. But yeah, but if you want to know what it is, if you look on the archives website for the exhibitions, there's a Christmas exhibition, and that slide is on there, so you can have a look at it on there.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions that people would like to ask? If you'd like to raise the hand, if you would like to. Doesn't look like we have any questions. I'll just quickly check through again. Brilliant. Well, thank you everybody such a lot for coming to today's talk, and we hope to see you next month. Thank you very much.
Okay, bye bye everybody. Sorry for your issues. Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.